While the Cornelia Marie also appeared in the Deadliest Catch spin-off Deadliest Catch Bloodline, as of 2023, its whereabouts are unknown.
If the Bering Sea is the stage and crab boats are its actors, then Deadliest Catch has always been a place straddled between survival and extreme spectacle. Fans expect a waves near-death misses and the familiar rhythm of steel against ice. They know the dangers of the sea, and it excites them as they watch man versus nature. However, sometimes the most shocking disappearance isn't a man lost overboard. It's when an entire vessel seems to vanish from the screen. When Cornelia Marie, one of the show's most iconic mainstays in her own right, quietly slipped out of sight, fans got restless, and it hit harder than any rogue wave. Was it ratings, reality, or something hidden below deck that sent the boat into exile? Join us as we reveal the real reason why Cornelia Marie disappeared from Deadliest Catch. Long before television cameras captured her icy decks, the Cornelia Marie was already destined for the stormy pages of maritime history. She was built in 1989 in Louisiana and wasn't intended to be just another crabbo hammered together to haul pots. Coming in at 128 feet long, she was forged from steel and engineered for durability. A sturdy fortress of the sea. She was named after Cornelia Marie Collins, the wife of the original owner, Ralph Collins. While many boats carried names that faded into obscurity, hers would eventually become iconic, etched into the lore of both the fishing industry and reality television. When Discovery launched Deadliest Catch in 2005, the producers didn't just want a working boat. They wanted vessels with unique personalities. Vessels weren't going to just be background props in their show. They were going to be characters in their own right. Few fit that role better than Cornelia Marie. Her distinctive green and white hull cut across the Bering Sea like a wearer charging into battle. Every time she appeared on screen, fans knew they'd be treated to a story that was more than just crab holes. It was promised to be human drama playing out on a steel stage. And at the heart of it all stood Captain Phil Harris. Captain Phil, the soul of the Cornelia Marie. Phil Harris wasn't just another skipper barking orders into the wind. He was larger than life, with a gruff exterior that could weather a storm and a softer side that won viewers over instantly. His combination of toughness and vulnerability made him one of the most beloved figures on Deadliest Catch. The ice comes down. If it gets to my pots on the edge, it'll just pick them up and drink them. Take them and set them drop them off at 1,000 fathoms. His leadership on the Cornelia Marie was as unpredictable as the sea itself. He could be tough on his deckhands, demanding perfection when hauling pots in brutal conditions. Yet behind that intensity was a man who deeply cared about his crew and his family. He lived for his sons, Josh and Jake Harris, who frequently appeared alongside him on the boat. Their presence added an extra layer to the show as a generational story about a father trying to pass down both knowledge and legacy in one of the deadliest professions on Earth. 4. Fans, watching him command the Cornelia Marie was as captivating as the towering waves themselves. He embodied the dangerous romance of the sea. Sometimes equal parts chaos, courage, and other Time's tragedy waiting to unfold. As the seasons rolled on, the Cornelia Marie became more than just another vessel on the show. She was one of its central icons, rivaling the Northwestern, the Time Bandit, and the Wizard. Viewers followed her not just for the action, but for the stories tied to her decks. Phil's leadership style was relatable, because it wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, admitted to weaknesses, and showed the human side of a captain's job. In particular, his interactions with Josh and Jake became highlights of the series. Sometimes heartwarming, sometimes tense, but always authentic. By mid-2000, the Cornelia Marie wasn't just a fishing boat, but a household name. Merchandise, fan clubs, and online forums dedicated to the vessel sprang up. Fans felt connected not only to Phil, but to the boat itself. Her green and white paint scheme became symbolic, an emblem of endurance and family legacy. Unfortunately, in the brutal world of crab fishing, fortune is never permanent. The tides were about to turn, and what happened next would change the course of the Cornelia Marie forever. The tragedy that changed everything. The turning point came during Season 6 of Deadliest Catch. On the 29th of January, 2010, while the Cornelia Marie was offloading crab at St. Paul Island, disaster struck. Captain Phil Harris suffered a massive stroke. Cameras were rolling, and what unfolded was one of the most heartbreaking arcs ever broadcast in reality television. He was airlifted for medical care, and for days fans followed updates with bated breath and tension coursing through their veins. There was hope because everyone knew that he was a fighter. But the sea had claimed too much from him already. On the 9th of February, at just 53 years old, Phil Harris passed away. The news hit fans like a rogue wave. For many, it felt like losing a family member. And for Cornelia Marie, it marked the beginning of her most uncertain chapter. Tragic turn in Season 6 when Captain Harris suddenly passed away from an intracranial hemorrhage. The man who had defined her identity was gone, and no one knew whether she could continue without him. Phil's death left a gaping hole not just in the show, but in the Harris family and the crew who had sailed under him. For Josh and Jake, the loss was both deeply personal and crushingly public. Millions of viewers mourned alongside them, but mourning didn't keep the lights on or the boat seaworthy. Cornelia Marie suddenly found herself at a crossroads. The debate revolved around who would lead her and shoulder the financial and operational responsibilities that came with keeping such a large vessel at sea. For those not in the know, the ownership of the boat was complicated. It didn't solely belong to the Harris family. Multiple stakeholders had a say in her fate, and without Phil at the helm, those disputes grew louder. Still, the boat pushed forward. Josh Harris, though young and inexperienced compared to his father, was determined to keep the legacy alive. Jake, meanwhile, struggled with personal issues that would later pull him away from the spotlight. The result was a Cornelia Marie caught in limbo. Sometimes fishing when she could, other times struggling when she couldn't, and never quite reclaiming the stability she had under Phil. While the world mourned Phil Harris, the producers of Deadliest Catch faced their own dilemma. Cornelia Marie had always been one of the show's anchors. But without his commanding presence, could she still be trusted to deliver the same quality of entertainment with her new captain? The hard truth was the Deadliest Catch was more than a documentary. It was also a big business. Boats weren't guaranteed screen time. They had to earn it by providing both drama and dependability. If a vessel wasn't seaworthy, if a crew wasn't compelling, or if a captain couldn't hold the narrative, Discovery could and would choose to focus elsewhere. And they did. For Cornelia Marie, that meant her very survival on screen would depend on more than history. She would need to prove she still belonged in the deadly televised theater of the Bering Sea. The tragedy of Phil's passing was only the beginning. What came next was a storm of financial struggles, leadership challenges, and behind-the-scenes decisions that would eventually lead to her disappearance from the series. When she finally vanished, fans were left asking the same haunting question. How could one of the most iconic vessels on Deadliest Catch simply disappear? After the storm, picking up the pieces. The death of Captain Phil Harris was not just a personal loss. It was a seismic event for Cornelia Marie and the series that had made her famous. When he died, the boat didn't just lose her captain. She lost her anchor, her heartbeat, and her symbolic connection to the millions who had followed her journey. Josh and Jake Harris suddenly found themselves standing in their father's shadow, asked to carry on a legacy they weren't entirely ready for. At the time, Josh was in his mid-20s. He had experience on deck, but not the years of leadership that build a captain's reputation. Jake, meanwhile, was already battling personal demons that would make consistency on board a challenge. For fans, the sight of Phil's sons trying to step into his role was both heart-wrenching and inspiring. They wanted to believe Cornelia Marie could go on and that the boat could survive tragedy the way so many crabbers had survived towering waves. The first major challenge wasn't even about fishing. It was about money and paperwork. As mentioned earlier, Cornelia Marie wasn't owned outright by the Harris family. In fact, Cornelia Marie Collins herself, the namesake of the boat, retained significant ownership alongside other stakeholders. That meant every decision about maintenance, upgrades, or whether the boat would even head out for the crab season had to be made collectively. Without Phil at the helm to unify everyone, disputes became more complicated. The Harris brothers, beloved as they were, simply didn't have the same leverage their father once had. Boats like the Cornelia Marie require constant investment. Engines need overhauls. Safety inspections need passing, and gear wears down after every brutal season. Without steady cash flow and strong leadership, it's easy for a vessel to fall behind. And falling behind in the crab industry means risking your license, your crew, and your reputation. This is where Cornelia Marie began to stumble. Operating a crabbo in the Bering Sea is brutally expensive. Annual maintenance alone can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars if a vessel isn't fishing, or if her catch quotas are reduced by any chance. The money simply isn't there to cover those costs. After Phil's passing, Cornelia Marie needed major work to remain compliant with Coast Guard regulations. There were rumors of failing inspections, mechanical issues, and a lack of the kind of investment other boats on the show enjoyed. Fans often underestimate just how financially fragile even famous vessels can be. Fame doesn't fix busted engines. As months turned into years, she found herself slipping into cycles of repairs, partial fishing seasons, and uncertainty. Each time, Josh Harris pushed to keep the boat alive. But it often meant scrambling for funds, juggling ownership disputes, and pleading her case to Discovery producers who were less inclined to feature a vessel that couldn't guarantee a season's worth of action. Behind the scenes, the producers of Deadliest Catch were facing their own hard reality. The show thrived on consistency and drama. Each season, Discovery wanted to follow boats that were not only seaworthy, but also rich in personality. For years, Cornelia Marie had provided both. Phil Harris was television gold with his authentic, gritty, vulnerable, and compelling persona. With him gone, Discovery executives had to ask themselves if Josh would carry the legacy on. Would audiences tune in for the younger Harris brothers in the same way they had for their father? It was a brutal calculation. While the fan base clearly adored Cornelia Marie, television is a business first. If a boat didn't deliver ratings, it risked being sidelined. In the immediate aftermath of Phil's death, Discovery did continue to feature